It's sometimes crazy to think that the term vibe coding was coined just in February this year by Andrej Karpathy on Twitter. And I feel like you guys are, along the vibe coding spectrum. There's the sort of ultra casual folks who are vibe coding, websites and simple apps. And then we have maybe on the sort of hardcore end of the scale, something like a cursor that lets you, vibe code within IDE coding environment. So where does Replit sit? What's your kind of core use case, your core customer base? And yeah, I don't know, how do you guys fill in that spectrum of vibe coding?
Well, first of all, I'm excited to be here. I remember when this was a much smaller conference at your office.
In our office, yeah.
2 years ago. Of course, Volley is a YC Winter 18, so represent. In terms of where Replit sits at, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, on the one end, you have the professional developer, and Cursor, others are making them like 20, 50, 100% more productive, which is really great. On the other end, you have website builders, and for example, Wix, acquired this company called Base44, and it's clear that's going to vibe coding as well. You want to generate a website really quickly, web design, maybe a little e-commerce website, but there's this whole sort of gradation in the middle where you want to build a real business, you want to build a business, you don't have any coding experience. For example, just recently, there was a tweet on Twitter, and someone was like, a finance guy had an idea for an app, went to Replit, built it, made it $500 million in contract value in a matter of weeks. I'm like, I don't know if that's real or not. I'm not going to retweet it until I check it out. It checks out. I talked to him yesterday.
Okay.
JP Morgan exec found a problem in the investment banking space, went and validated it, actually got his first contract before building anything, went to Replit, built the entire thing, and now, a few weeks later, he's at a $1 million contract value.
Oh my gosh.
So if you want to go to production, if you're a vibe coder, don't understand much about programming, you want to go to production, you want to have a secure environment, right? Replit has been working on our development infrastructure for 10 years now. For example, we have this technology, a file system that's completely reversible. So anytime the agent makes anything wrong, we have a system-wide undo. It undoes the database, the file system, everything else related to it. We have a security scanner. Once you want to publish something, we'll scan it using static analysis, using AI analysis, using data flow analysis. And then once you deploy it, we have a partnership with Microsoft and Google that's really, really deep and allows you to scale really, really fast. We've had websites that had 3 million concurrent users. And so taking people from hobbyists all the way to a professional, that's happening in the enterprise as well, where an operations manager ships a product. I mean, we have Fortune 500 companies with Replit apps in production, sometimes without IT knowing, but later on they'll know, and we'll get them sort of comfortable with it, and that scales, and that's where the hard work is.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up a question I had, which is back when we were in Y Combinator together 7 years ago, a long time ago in the AI universe, in 2018, Replit was a website where people would learn to code in many cases. They would do their first engineering, and then one of the great things about interviewing you is you have many hot take tweets and hot take interviews, and one of them is you famously said, I no longer think you should learn to code. I no longer think anyone should learn to code. And this led to a bit of an online hoopla on Hacker News. They were not very excited to hear that. I mean, what is your perspective? Like, I have a 3-year-old daughter, I have a 1-year-old son. Like, should they learn to code, or should we just forget about it?
No,
and the future is Replit. Yeah.
Go to Replit. Replit.com.
Yeah.
So basically, I kind of made my personality for the past decade in Silicon Valley about being the learn to code guy. I was the first engineer at Code Academy. We taught 50 million people how to code. At Replit, we had 100 days of Python, and we always envisioned a world where, hey, coding and software is really powerful. More people should be able to do it. I think it transforms how people build businesses, creates more entrepreneurs. Enterprises become a lot more efficient once you have more people coding and making software. The problem is coding has been the bottleneck, right? And so you can at the margins make coding a little bit easier. Ultimately, people don't want to learn how to code. Not everyone.
Coding is too hard, basically.
Not just coding is too hard. Here, I'll make another controversial
Okay.
statement.
All right.
I will say that there's a certain mindset, perhaps it is even innate property, where some people can really think in code, others can't.
Okay.
And that's true across the different gradation of code. So 100 years ago, people were coding in machine code. Not many people in the world can do machine code. You have to be a scientist. And then Grace Hopper said, I want to invent a compiler so that people can program in English. That was like 100 years before Karpathy said that. And then people were up in arms about it. Pitchforks. No, Grace Hopper, you're evil. You can't make it so that people can't code in machine code because they need to understand every bit and flip and whatever. But it actually, now the low-level programming is the high-level programming languages. And so we're just on this continuum of getting more and more people to use computers the way they were intended to be. Computers are these amazing, powerful, programmable machines. Most people are consumers of these machines. I think Alan Kay said the computer revolution hasn't happened yet, and it's true, but now it's happening. Now everyone can be a programmer.
So Grace Hopper is the original vibe coder.
That's right.
Is the headline of the session.
Yeah.
I like it. Coming back to the people who are getting a lot of value on Replit, you mentioned some folks with $1 million in contracts. Like, what are like the 3 biggest businesses that have been built from scratch on top of Replit, and what are like 3 amazing B2B or enterprise use cases? Because it seems like you guys have pivoted a little more towards serving businesses and serving the enterprise rather than the sort of indie hackers in many ways.
There are a couple of venture scale companies on their way to like a unicorn status. I think one might be already. Magic School.
Okay.
Magic School started, I think late 23 on Replit. It was a teacher during COVID, just found himself with a lot of time, used ChatGPT, learned a little bit of coding, and went to Replit, built an app that helps teachers create assignments and grade assignments using AI. And it's the fastest growing edtech startup in the world.
Wow.
And it's at like a $500 million valuation, and now I think it's on its way to more.
And is it purely on Replit, just from scratch, or are they like leveling up from there, or are you adding the tools along the way to level up with them?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure if they're still kind of on Replit today scaling. They use it still internally quite a bit.
Yeah.
But the point is, that entrepreneur was created, otherwise wouldn't have been created if it wasn't for Replit. We're also building tools along the way. I mean, so sort of our customers are growing, and we're growing with them. Like, you need the security infrastructure, you need the scalability, and that really kind of matured this year. So there are venture scale companies. There are, I could spend hours talking about these. The way I think about it is there's this sort of unmonetized asset in people's brains, which is domain knowledge. That finance guy has an idea that most programmers don't know anything about. Here's another one, a VC in Europe, their CFO built their internal CRM portfolio management thing to kind of manage their portfolio and found it to be useful for other investors. Left the company now on a €5 million run rate, just so like a few months in.
What's the name of that?
I mean, I can't share those just yet, but we'll kind of publish those when they're ready. We're always on their case to publish these stories. So yeah, it's across the board.
Nice. I mean, another hot take of yours that I really appreciated and enjoyed is you did an interview where you said, unlike many of our competitors, maybe most of our competitors, we are gross margin positive, as in we are not selling dollars for 75 cents. We're not reselling OpenAI or Anthropic tokens for less than they're worth. We have, at least on a unit basis, a gross margin positive business. Like,
not just on unit basis.
Overall as well.
That's recent.
Okay,
We're GAAP gross profits.
Okay, all right, even better. So I'm interested in how long, I think there's gonna be a lot of bubble discussions throughout the day, like how long do you think your competitors or the industry can sort of sustain this period in which people are selling dollars for 75 cents or they're selling for 80 cents, and I guess, are there any of your competitors in particular that you think are kind of egregious offenders in this case?
There's a good question about the competitors in the space, like, are they actually growing? Because they used to publish their ARR numbers every few weeks. They don't anymore. So I would ask that question.
Which competitors do you have in mind?
Luckily, Replit, some VCs, for some reason, really hate us, and they publish our numbers for us. So when we went to end a fundraise, they leaked our numbers. I kind of know why they hate us, but
Weren't they good numbers? Isn't that a positive?
That's why it's crazy. I think they try to spin it as like the negative gross margins at the time, or it's a period of time where we had negative gross margins. But our numbers are public, and it's growing fast. But to your question, No, I don't think we're in a regime where you could do that. Part of the reason is product is really, really important in this world. Like when a Replit user gets 2 orders of magnitude savings, for example, we hear from people like a doctor in the UK got quoted £100,000 for an app by a software development shop, built it using a few $100s. It wouldn't matter if we charge him $700, $1,000, maybe $2,000, right? The ROI is clear; it's orders of magnitude, right? And so, competing on price, you're a commodity, right? And so we resisted competing on price. We actually raised our prices over time. But if you are competing on price, then maybe you don't have a business.
So who's competing on price? Who's the commodity?
I'll leave that as an exercise.
Okay. Like give you some names. Like tell me growing and or positive gross margins. Like lovable.
I'm not gonna do that. But
Cursor.
So here's what's happening in the sort of cursor cognition side, which as you defined it on the more hardcore engineering side.
Hardcore, yeah.
What they're doing is they're what seems to be fine-tuning Chinese models. I think they should give credits to the models. I mean, we fine-tuned DeepSeek a while ago. We gave credit to DeepSeek, but maybe it's not a Chinese model. They can come out and say that, but they're doing that, which is great, and they're gaining efficiencies and better margins because of that. In our space, when you're targeting non-coders, we have a lot of coders, but when you're targeting also non-coders, you need to use the best model possible because every inch of quality really, really matters because there isn't an engineer in the loop that's kind of reviewing the code.
Sort of editing the code afterwards.
And so you need to use state-of-the-art model, and that makes it harder for people to kind of have this positive gross margin unless you're producing so much value that you can charge more.
Got it. Well, that brings me, to my next sort of area because obviously Replit Agent seems like it's been a big success. Agents is sort of the word of the year, I guess, in AI. And, I tried to make a website on Replit with the Replit agent, and it gave me some options of like, hey, first I'll lay out a plan, and that'll take 5 to 10 minutes for me to get back to you on it, or I'll just build the whole website, and that'll take like 20 minutes. And I was like, yeah, let's build the whole website. Let's go true vibe coding, baby, and see what happens. And I fired it off, and 45 minutes later, it was just like, I'm still working on this. And an hour and 15 minutes later, it was like, I'm still working on this. And, it's fine. Ultimately, we got somewhere. But I am interested in this agentic future that you and a lot of other folks are proposing, which is, we're sending off swarms of coding agents, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 10, 1,000, and beyond. And it seems like today, there's a lot of missing UX in agents that I have when I'm working with other humans in terms of like understanding how long things are going to take, like what, giving an estimate, how they coordinate, how they merge their work. Like, what is your view for a future in which I'm coordinating 10 agents or 100 agents or 1,000 agents on Replit, and how do they all work together?
Well, on the question of time, I think in the space of like vibe coding, Replit has the most autonomous agents.
Yeah.
And yes, that can be sometimes frustrating when you're using it because we're not very good at giving you estimates, sort of like human developers. But
just multiply by 3. Right? Yeah. that doesn't happen in my company.
Yeah, not at all.
Yeah, we always get
our engineers are.
Yeah.
But so the really cool thing that we did recently is we added a verifier in the loop, and so the reason the website might take longer is because the agent would have otherwise give you something broken, but instead Replit spins up a browser, tests the code, spins up another agent that's adversarial that tries to break the code, that does review on the code, and then goes back to the coding agent, fixes that, and that loop goes on forever, really. We've seen users kind of run the agent for 12 hours or so.
Wow.
But the most important thing, again, is because the ROI could be so huge, you could be saving hundreds of thousands of dollars. What's really important is to give you a high-quality product. Now, on the question of multiple agents, I think that's coming, and Agent 4 for us, a big part of the problem we're solving there is that. So a lot of a lot of what our companies do, like in the agent space, is research on the infrastructure that the agents use in order to build that software. So for example, you need to solve merge conflicts in order to have multiple agents working, especially if you don't have an engineer in the loop. If a pure vibe coder, they will not be able to merge those conflicts. Another thing is you need to be able to have the ability to try a lot of different paths. So Replit's file system infrastructure is a copy and write infrastructure, meaning that you can fork the file system any number of times, like 100 times in 500 milliseconds, and you can try a lot of different paths. And the one that's successful, you kind of pick that. So we can do sampling across a lot of different agents. And now the big puzzle we're trying to solve is, can you actually do conflict-free collaboration across agents? Models are really bad at that. But this is our opportunity. So anytime model is really not very good at a certain thing, such as merge conflicts, this is where the kind of research that we do adds a lot of value.
Got it. And are you training your own model to deal with these merge conflicts? Or are you building your own system?
We're exploring all of that. For example, with the testing agent, we started by training our own model, but we found that conglomeration of different models plus some of the infrastructure that I talked about was good enough to create a computer use framework that was better than the state-of-the-art framework.
Got it. Well, I want to go back a little bit to the history of the company before you saw these, the leaked ARR growth curves, which I believe you validated to be true, showed that you guys were, sort of cruising along at something like a 2 to 3 million ARR for a number of years, and then something like 2023, 2024, maybe even 2025, you saw this crazy inflection point where now you're, well over 100 million ARR and beyond. Like, I'm fascinated. You've mentioned, in some other interviews, like, you raised $100 million and sort of went through that 2-3 million ARR period for a while, a number of years, right? And things weren't really taking off, things weren't really working, and ultimately you ended up, I believe, like laying off half the company, which, as a founder, I just found incredible, an incredible story to hear, like that you sort of saw that things weren't going the way they needed to from a growth perspective, and even though you had money in the bank, you decided to make a move in terms of personnel and costs and lining that up with your growth. Like, how did you make that decision? What were the key drivers of it? If you had $100 million in the bank, you didn't actually need to do it. Like, what brought you to that point? I guess intellectually and also just like emotionally.
This company is basically my entire adult life, because even before it was a company, it was a side project. So the way I started it is, I was going to university back in Jordan where I grew up. I didn't have a laptop, and every time I wanted to do a little bit of coding, I had to install an IDE and do all of that in the computer lab at school. And I thought that I should just be able to open a website and start coding. And that was the initial kernel of the idea. Originally, it was an open source project, and that became the basis to a lot of education technology companies teaching how to code. But over time, I realized that the value is not in the coding itself. The value is actually people and their ideas, and how many amazing entrepreneurial people that are currently blocked because it's required for you to go through this arduous process that's called coding and learning how to code in order to build something of value. So that kind of kicked off my mission in life, which is the internet is the most amazing wealth creation engine that the world has seen, and yet only this geographic area, Silicon Valley and maybe Seattle, that really reaped most of the benefit. But a lot more people in the world could benefit from this. We can create a lot more entrepreneurs, and that's became my life mission. And so when you think about it this way, I'm just going to work on this for the rest of my life. And so I want to extend the runway as much as possible in order to succeed. And I just believe in my heart of hearts that we had the right idea. People want to make software. It turns out people do want to make software, and the big unlock was people don't want to write code, which is fine. And
So you believe so much in the mission that you were willing to take a lot of pain up front just to allow yourself to pursue that for as long as it needed to.
We have a company value called Seek Pain, which pushes a lot of people from working at Replit.
Yeah,
but the idea is that like startups are painful. Any kind of business is painful. A lot of companies just lie to themselves. It was, things are going to be all right. It's going to take off at some day. Things were shit, and we had to act. And the painful thing to do was face it head on. Counterintuitively, Seek pain means you reduce pain in the future, because the more you delay pain, you're in the world of pain in the future, which I think, by the way, if we didn't do the layoff, we would have been in a much worse position in order to pivot the company toward like being an agent company. Because pivoting a larger company is a lot harder than pivoting a small company.
That makes sense. So for my last question, as a quick fire one, about 2 years ago, you declared independence from San Francisco as a company and said you were headed to Foster City.
Yes.
Foster City was going to become synonymous with
Foster City? I don't expect anyone to
future.
Foster City here.
Yeah,
Look, we have one.
big airport.
There we go. Let's go, Foster City.
Big airport proximity fans here. Yeah. So we have the mayor coming in later.
Mayor of Foster City?
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. The mayor of the city or county of San Francisco.
Okay, because I don't know
Daniel
him
Leary. We should bring him in as like a surprise guest. They could debate. I think a lot of people who live in the city or work in the city, including myself, feel like there's been a lot of good progress in San Francisco over the last year. Like, as a final question, as the de facto mayor of Foster City for today, is San Francisco back? Are we coming back? Are you coming back? What's your perspective on San Francisco going forward?
Look, there are a lot of things to admire about San Francisco, obviously. Its long history, its tradition, its beauty, all of that stuff. So I don't take any of that away from it. But I would say we benefited a lot being outside of the bubble that is San Francisco, where our employees were out to dinner every day, kind of talking to other companies, and you end up copying each other, and everyone's doing what other people are doing, and all the cultures sort of are the same, and employees kind of rotate between companies. The only difference is their badge is different or their laptop is different. and so Foster City gave us like a little bit of a distance. And I would say it also created a bit of a hurdle to working at Replit. I think people should make a bit of a sacrifice to work at the company they really believe in. And so if that sacrifice is 30-minute commute, that's fine. I think adding, like, for example, like we have a document on our site, reasons not to join Replit. Like, we really care about the culture, people joining Replit to really be interested in the thing we're doing, not just joining like a hot company. And so I actually like the seclusion that is. And every time we're sort of secluded, and in 2023, 24, when we did the layoff, everyone's down on Replit. Replit's never going to succeed. I fucking love that feeling. And so I want to create that in our companies. We're trying to innovate. We'll come into San Francisco, drink the Kool-Aid a little bit, take what's
like
valuable
event.
of it, and then go back to Foster City and build the next big thing.
Seek pain.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Amjad.
Thank you.